This is what happens when the nerds find Black Sabbath. Welcome, fellow and future metalheads, to the Metal Substance, a series about metal music and its history, created for the long-term goal of eventually funding the creation of a city philharmonic. I'm your host. Call me Victor. Hope you're relaxing with something to drink. Today we are talking about an album from 1981, Cirith Ungol's Frost and Fire. Real quick, let's do some housekeeping. Frost and Fire is a Ray Bradbury story from 1946. Cirith Ungol is a reference to the work of Professor J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, which was published in 1954. That's 35 and 57 years ago, respectively. So that's like a metal band today naming themselves after a fantasy book published in 1999 and a science fiction book published in 1991. Hello everyone, thanks for coming out on Tuesday night. We are Soul of Fire, and tonight we're going to play everything from our latest album, Reaper Man. Dang it, we might actually be onto something there. It's a strange sort of classic, Frost and Fire. People usually don't say, oh, I'm going to listen to some Cirith Ungol, Frost and Fire, and I gotta say, I've definitely never heard anyone say that this is their favorite Cirith Ungol record. That honor typically goes to King of the Dead, shout out to the Bach work on that album, or Paradise Lost, which was years later when Cirith Ungol had buffed out the rough edges and had figured out the sound that was especially theirs. It's a beautiful thing when a band does that. Like Creator, it has a discography where, you know, the debut isn't terrible, but why would you give that a spin when Pleasure to Kill is right there? So, despite their later work's critical acclaim, this debut is worthy of its own historical recognition. When Cirith Ungol created this metal, no one knew what to call it. It was heavier than hard rock, but it couldn't be doom because there was too much energy, and the material was kind of strange for the mainstream, and it was also still too early to be called power metal. So it becomes an album that's a bridge to specialization, and in its own strange way, almost as important as Venom's Welcome to Hell in that respect, which was released also in 1981. And like Welcome to Hell, this album's just plain old fun from start to finish. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be doom metal when it makes you want to smile and shake it out like this. This album would be a cornerstone, not just for the band's career, but for epic metal, doom metal, and yes, power metal, which they all melded together into that Cirith Ungol sound that only they seem to be able to truly capture. This album was released on October 30th, 1981, but in reality, for this band's story, we have to reach back to Ventura, California, 1971, where several boys from Ventura, Greg Lindstrom, Robert Garvin, Jerry Fogel, and Pat Galligan, were in a band. Galligan was left behind, and because the band wanted to play something that was like a combination of Grand Funk Railroad and mountain rock, which is mountain being the name of the band, mountain. That's what was considered heavy back in the day, and I love these terms. I love when we talk about this period of history, musical history. You could hear the evolution in the language. So you've got the prehistoric, oh, this rock, and somebody go, oh, this rock, but hurt more when hit. Hard rock? Yes, hard rock. And then you got a modern scientist coming in with a lab. Look at these poor savages. They don't know it's called metal yet. But anyway, Cirith Ungol was not a band that was ever interested in being popular or trendy, which is good because they ended up being neither. Not a single album of theirs would hit the charts until 2020, when Forever Black hit number 130 on the Canadian charts. Get yourselves a beer for that one, fellas. These are guys who sat down and said, look, we like Grand Funk Railroad, and we also like the work of this English professor. He wrote these books about some guys who lived in the dirt. Let's name ourselves after the Spider Pass in the story. And off they went. But Cirith Ungol didn't just slap a fantasy name over Black Sabbath riffage. They forged their own sound and style. They were true believers in the fantasy genre, and in their careers would ask and answer the questions like, what if instead of singing about nuclear war, we sang about dragons and swords and wizards? These lyrical themes are now so overdone and cliches, really, in modern understandings of power metal, but it was innovative at the time. It also took quite some time to figure out, so much so that it wasn't until 1981, 10 years after the band formed, that many of the songs that had been in the repertoire for years actually got formally recorded onto wax. So before we get into the music itself, I wanted to talk about the album art. Actually, we'll probably spend more time talking about it than the music. Uh, this is a piece by Michael Whelan, an American artist famous for his science fiction and fantasy cover art, winner of no less than 15 Hugo Awards for Best Professional Artist, winning his first in 1981, eventually being inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame in 2009 for his contributions of bringing realism as a style to the genre. His credits are in the hundreds. Some of his non-music work includes making covers for the Del Rey editions of Dragon Riders of Pern, the Mars series from Edgar Rice Burroughs, and quite a bit of H.P. Lovecraft. He's also done many of Robert Heinlein's works, such as The Cat That Walks the Walls. Look forward to my Heinlein videos, by the way. Probably his most famous work these days that he's been doing is the cover arts for Brandon Sanderson's The Stormlight Archives books. Now, Michael Whelan's music cover contributions are significant as well. He's done work for bands that we're going to look at more eventually, a short list of which includes Cause of Death by Obituary, Epidemic of Violence by Demolition Hammer, and four Sepultura albums, those being from their third one, Beneath the Remains, to their sixth one, Roots, which I think a lot of people would say is the prime Sepultura period. This is the first, but not only of Cirith Ungol's albums that he would do the cover for. In fact, every single Cirith Ungol album has been graced by a book cover from Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melnborn saga. But we're falling off afield already, so I'm not going to get more into all of that. Okay, I want to talk about the music now. And I want to talk about the elephant in the room first. Tim Baker's singing. Very divisive. A vocalist can be life or death in a metal band, not only in terms of gaining an audience, but even determining what genre the band is considered. I know Tim Baker has his fans, still does all these decades later. I know he also has his detractors, people who perhaps don't even listen to Cirith Ungol anymore after just hearing his voice once. Here's what I'll say. He has that rock and roll rhythm, and that's what's most important for this record's sound, as far as I'm concerned. And this album, it's a little tricky to do a track by track in a way, because there's times I'm almost tempted to call it progressive. There's a lot going on within the rock and roll orb. So, for example, on the song I'm Alive, I think they're at any moment going to start singing, "There is a house in New Orleans." But then at other times, I think Alice Cooper is about to come in and start singing. Like, can you imagine saying such a thing about a metal record today? On What Does It Take, there's this synth interlude, really feels influenced by Uriah Heep, but at the same time, it's got a proto 8-bit sound. So they're simultaneously blazing this path through to what will eventually become dungeon crawler music. And what is he singing about? It's honest to God an incel album, which that's a whole other discussion in nerd culture. But then it goes directly into Edge of a Knife, which is like, well, I got the rock and roll in me now, so I got the pain and I can understand it. I live on the edge now, baby. And then the way it closes on Maybe That's Why, an instrumental track, so progtastic, so tasty in its tones. I just want just the section at the start, especially. I just want it to go on for an hour. It's not just the lead guitar in this track either. It's the keyboards, the backing work. It's all beautiful. But then it ends on this sort of beeping. It's not an alarm clock, but it's not like somebody dying either. There's something happening, but I don't know what. Like something forward we need to move to. It feels like an ellipses, but an ellipses that's been underlined. So in conclusion, though, there's certainly no shortage of power metal out there in the world these days. There's Blind Guardian, of course. uh, and so many others. This, though, it wasn't Motorhead. It was a different kind of epic, and yet it is Motorhead because them and Cirith Ungol are unapologetically rock and roll. So in a way, this album is also a wonderful reminder that metal is ultimately a series of footnotes since Chuck Berry. Uh, this album also reminds us that creating something of your own takes time. This was because this was a decade of making on this one, and that future influence is not dependent on immediate commercial success. So give this a listen if you're curious, and if you liked it, then give their album King of the Dead a spin too. Speaking of commercial success, though, I wanted to talk about some things here at the end of the video. I'm going to be making a real effort going forward now that I've finally finished moving to average one video a day at least through the end of September. I've spent too much time mostly unofficially making this one, and I want to sharpen it up more still, but here's the reality of trying to make it on YouTube. I need to make 100 bad videos, get people criticizing me in the comments, and working from there. So it's better to get out twice as many videos at first and refine my process and skills that way instead of trying to perfect every little thing on every little video along the way. Hope that you all understand. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Please let me know anything you think I could do to make these videos better. Don't forget that there is no substitute for listening to the album yourself. And remember, history will be written by the victor.